Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So yes, another video in front of the camera other than the once a year YouTube Sports Card Hall of Fame ballot. So I'm actually going to do one. I'll try to do a couple more of these this year as opposed to the last couple of years where I've kind of relied on the trope of recording the screen and then just kind of talking over it. But I had a couple of minutes this afternoon here, and early evening, afternoon, and I figured I would record this, give an update on one thing there since it didn't warrant a whole big elaborate video just on the one thing. And I did receive a question that even though we kind of touched on it before, I don't really do much in the way of Q&A on the channel. Although if somebody leaves a comment or leaves a question, I'll usually kind of touch on it there in the comment section. Or if we've got a topic that people want to talk about on the Friday Live, that's usually where a lot of the questions and answers thing kind of happen. But if there's ever anything like that, you can always send a message in one of those categories, and I can, if it warrants some deeper explanation, I'm more than happy to make a video and talk about it. But I figured this one was a good opportunity. This was an easy one, and we can do it. I also wanted to give a quick update on the whole backyard breaks thing. Really the last time I'm going to be touching on this one. We already talked about it on the Friday Live, made our opinions pretty clear on that, and then also talked about it on the podcast a little bit, and then brought in Brandon, Baubles and Ball Cards, in order to give his take on it as well. So I think we've pretty much covered it from every angle. This was actually an update a couple of days ago. In reality, it wasn't this breaking news thing that necessitated this big run-up. And it was just confirming what we already know. So in reality, I'll just quickly go over it. I'll include a link in the description to the Instagram post. Sports Card Investor is pretty much the only person who was able to get any response from Whatnot related to it. But it was pretty much the response we expected. So I'll quickly go into that. I'll read off the screen over here, and then I'll get into one question, and then I'll give a couple updates for stuff coming up on the channel, and then we'll let you go. Real quick video. But again, first time in a while doing it in front of the screen, so why not? So first one here, just looking at it, the post basically said that we've learned that Whatnot will not be releasing a statement or making public comments, which obviously you haven't heard anything, about the backyard breaks incident. Whatnot handles policy violations like this internally and issues punishments directly, as they did here by banning the backyard grant account. So I'll give my opinion here in a second, but I'll finish reading this commentary here. Whatnot receives hundreds of reports of policy violations each month. I have no doubt about that, given the platform's reputation right now. So they have a company-wide policy to not issue statements about any violation, instead choosing to handle matters internally. Whatnot customers who reported backyard breaks policy violations received messages back stating the matter had been handled and closed. So the middle section there about all the different reports of policy violations and how they've got a company-wide policy not to issue statements about any violation. In general terms, and I kind of touched on this on the Friday Live and then also on the podcast, I'm not surprised about that. And in general terms, I'm not even necessarily against it. The problem is that sometimes exceptions have to be made. Sometimes you run into a situation, this is where I said the whole thing about there's not enough people other than at the very top who can legitimately make decisions there, or so it would seem, based on the way Whatnot does their business. You have to have somebody in there who is the adult in the room and just says, look, that is the policy. And if somebody does like a relatively minor incident where somebody does violate a policy and you're going to punish them in some way, you don't need to make a whole grand spectacle of it. You don't need to issue statements about every single individual thing anybody ever does, because stuff happens sometimes. But when it is a higher profile breaker with a reputation, and at this point, a documented track record of one issue after another issue after another issue, and it reflects on your platform, and they've got a bunch of different accounts where they do their streams from it on your platform, then you kind of have to read the room a little bit. You have to be thinking to yourself, hold on. It is a bigger issue for us to deal with this, and we kind of have to. This is where you have to issue the statement, even if you don't necessarily want to. And it's one of those things where ideally you could just be like, no, this is the account where you did it, banned. And this is the account of the individual, banned. And then you just kind of move on. But the individual here in the backyard breaks thing is one of the owners of the company. So in reality, by leaving the other channels open, you haven't stemmed the flow of revenue for the company. So what kind of punishment is it really? You close one account, well, they've got 2 or 3 or 4 others. I was actually checking earlier today, and one of the accounts was up and doing a break, and they were selling repacks. So obviously they're still fulfilling, and they're also blocking people in the chat that try to bring it up or reference it, and there's some defenses being made by some of the employees there. So there actually is a company, and there's employees there it behooves them to try their best to either downplay or try to defend it and whatnot by allowing it to kind of go on. Yes, they continue to collect their revenue, but it actually hurts their reputation more and more and more. And every time there's something else, and there's another little story that I heard about a Yu-Gi-Oh! Breaker or something like that, or Pokemon, something, it was a TCG, where they were doing a very bad job of pretending they were cutting packs, while in reality the packs were already open. But it was so blatant, and it was so poorly done, that it was downright embarrassing. I think Neo actually grabbed the footage of that, and actually showed it off, and it was embarrassingly bad. Like, it wasn't, this person will never be a magician with their terrible sleight of hand. Like, you're not fooling anybody with this video. the point is, and the reason I'm not specifically focusing on this is because it's a relatively minor issue in the grand scheme. This is where you do the policy violation, somebody reports it, and then you suspend or block the account. But then at the same time, that doesn't require a whole media storm. The reality is, and this is something that happened in the last couple of days, is that there are some mainstream media outlets that have started covering the Backyard Breaks thing. Well, guess who gets associated with that? Whatnot. So if you're Whatnot, you don't want this. So this is where I said you needed someone to be able to make the decision early. You should have suspended the account almost immediately, and then you could have looked into it and given some kind of a statement. Even if it was a half-ass, bare minimum statement, that would have been the bare minimum that I would have done. And you do it quickly. You don't wait until people start pressuring you, and you kind of have to have people bothering you with it. And Sports Card Investor has been sponsored by Whatnot, as have a lot of other people in the space. And it's one of those things where there's enough heat here where you can try to let things blow over. I mean, the hobby has been very good about letting things blow over, but it's one of those things where at the end of the day, it's not going to necessarily cripple the platform, but it hurts them. It creates a scenario where if you're the National or one of these other things that do business with them indirectly as well as part of the deal, that's where you come into it. And that's where a lot of the people are directing their attention, because if, Backyard Breaks is at the National, that could be a bit of a problem for them. But again, the National has the option. They could deny them entrance into that and not give them a booth. And in the same vein, they could look at Whatnot and say, hey, we need something from you, or else maybe we don't include you as part of it. But that's on the National. That's on them to figure it out. These separate organizations have to each make their own choice of how they want to approach this. And that's one of those things where, like I said, the bottom line is this update wasn't much of an update. It was kind of confirmation of what we already expected and confirmation of what we've already seen and heard. And by that, I mean not seen and not heard. So the fact there was silence, you kind of figured that there wasn't going to be any kind of statement. But it is problematic. To me, if I'm a company, I don't want somebody else speaking for me. I want to then, even if it's the bare minimum, I want to at least have my piece said, and then other people can try to extrapolate whatever they want. No, you make sure that you get your message out there. This is what we did. This is why we did it. Why are we handing this out through third party? That is not the way that I would conduct a business, but I'm not running the business. So that's kind of the update on the Whatnot piece. Just thought I would include that in here. Next up here, we've got one question that I received. Well, actually a couple of questions, but nonetheless it's one topic. So I'll quickly touch on this one again. First video in a while here, so I figure we'll have this topic here. This one was sent to me by Instagram, and I'll just include the question on the screen while I'm reading it. What are your thoughts on vaults to store your cards? Do you use one? If not, which one have you heard is best? So I'll answer the last question first, since it's the easiest. I haven't heard any of them is best. I've heard some good things and bad things from all the above. It kind of depends on what you're using them for. There are basically two vaults that I kind of use, and one of them, a lot of people would not consider a vault, but I'm going to explain that in a second. So I'll answer the other questions, and I'll kind of go into it. We've talked about this on the Friday Live also, a variety of different times. So it's one of those things that's a Friday Live kind of question. I figure I'll do it in this video, since why not? Been a while since I've done one of these. So my thoughts on vaults to store your cards. I think there is a place for them. For most people, though, it's not. I think the majority, like if you're a collector, most collectors don't need a vault for anything. I talk about it all the time. The average rank and file collector is not buying cards that are hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars, let alone tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars. Most people are not in that price bracket, and most of them, even ones that could afford to be, don't want to be. Personally, I don't have any five-figure cards here. I do have a couple of cards that enter into the thousands. Not a lot of them, but I do have a few. But that has only been the case over time. In some cases, it's cards that I bought years and years and years ago that eventually appreciated to that value. So I didn't start off with a $10,000 card that I paid $10,000 for. Or sorry, in this case, a $1,000 card that I paid $1,000 for. I've only had a handful of cards that I have paid over $1,000 for. Very rare cases when that's happened. But probably the most valuable card, single card, that I have is my 53 Topps Mickey Mantle. And that one I paid what was the market rate at the time. That was probably like 15 years ago. Probably, give or take. Maybe 10 years ago and change. But either way, it was like $650 at the time. It was already graded. It was $650. And that was the going rate. And then over the years, it's appreciated past that point. Now I think it's a couple grand. I had a 52 Bowman Mantle that was the same kind of thing. I think I paid $450 for that one. I sold it for $2,100 just because I didn't need it anymore and I wasn't going to do the set. So it's one of those things where it can happen if you buy something that does appreciate over time, but that's not the norm. Even in the collection that I have, where I've had a lot of fun with these cards over the years, I'm not collecting the kind of stuff that's going to appreciate to that degree. It's one of those things where I don't have $10,000 plus cards. However, if you build up a big enough collection, you can accumulate some value through it. And then it's up to you to figure it out. A lot of people will use safes. They'll do insurance. Some people like to drop off, like if you got really nice cards, some people like to drop it off in the bank and put it in a safety deposit box. That's a perfectly legitimate use. I'm not a big fan of those, but personally, because I don't like having it in the bank where on the one hand you're close enough by where if someone knows you have that stuff, then they might want to get to you in order to get to the safety deposit box, but it does have a layer of security in the sense that you have to go to the safety deposit box. Again, having a safe, do you want to keep it in your home? To each their own. All of you, those are deeper considerations than the purposes of this video. But I do see a use case. In particular, if you've got more valuable cards and you want to have them in a place that is secured, and at the same time, you also want to have high-res images. And I think the best use case, though, is if it's something where in the not too distant future, you're thinking about potentially selling it, because then you've already got the high-res images, you've already got it in a secured spot where you can basically push a button and activate it. Like, for example, Fanatics Collect. If you've already got something in a Fanatics Collect vault, you can push a button and have it put into an auction. And that's something where I could see the use case. So, like I said, I really use two vaults. One of them is the Fanatics Collect vault, and that is because I'll occasionally buy something on Fanatics Collect. And the second one, a lot of people don't consider to be a vault, and that would be COMC. Now, the reason why is because COMC's been around a long time, but at the same time, they don't think about it in a vault kind of way because it doesn't operate like a full-featured vault closer to the Fanatics Collect, formerly PWCC. It's not quite the same thing. However, there are elements of it that are still the same. You can send the cards over there. They do take images of it. They put an inventory tag on it, so to speak, in the sense that they catalog exactly what it is. Now, COMC was designed to kind of allow you to sell and buy those cards on the platform. And what it really comes down to for COMC, in most cases, you can either use it as a flipping mechanism. That's one thing you can do. So it is more designed for that. And that the second half of it is it's a way of, you can buy some cards either through Upper Deck ePack example, is a good one, or just on the platform itself. And then you accumulate a bunch of cards to do a consolidated shipping. And the consolidated shipping is really the best use case that I have for COMC. And I do sell some cards on there because I'll have extra stuff that'll sit around here that maybe doesn't make sense for eBay. Especially from Canada, the shipping just doesn't make sense for like a $5 card. And I have to charge $6 shipping. It doesn't make any sense because most of the time I need tracking and all that, and it's just not worth it. But at the same time, I could send it over COMC, 50-cent intake fee, and then maybe put $5 or $6 on it. And if I get $5 or $6 on it, I'll at least make about $4 and change. So that might be worth it for those kind of cards. Now, Fanatics Collect is more straightforward. That one has all those other features. In reality, the main reason I have stuff on Fanatics Collect is because consolidation. I'll buy these auction cards that I pick up, win enough of them to be able to justify the shipping, have them send it out to me. So in those cases, my usage of the vault is pretty much limited to my desire to have it in a place where it can be held until I'm ready to ship it. So those are the only reason that I would use one. So the first question was, what are my thoughts? I've kind of given that. Do you use one? Yes, sort of, for those reasons that I just gave. And I also gave some other reasons why you might be interested in using them. But I'll also say in the same vein, most people would not have a use case for it. As a collector, you may A, not have cards that are worthwhile to take that extra step, and B, you may want to have them with you. Another reason that you might not want to do that is, you might want to have them closer by, again, using the bank vault example with the safety deposit box. Or, again, just have a vault inside your house or put it in a gun cabinet lockbox or whatever. Your mileage may vary. It just comes down to kind of what level of security or insurance or whatever you're comfortable with. I can see the use case for it in very specific cases, but I think for the average collector, it's just not worthwhile. And then for the last one, which one I've heard best? I've heard good and bad stories of all the above. Their PSA has a vault now. Golden had a vault, and I think that got rolled into the acquisition with eBay. So I guess it's eBay vault now, I think. Something to that effect. So, you got an eBay vault, you got a Golden vault, which again might be the same thing. You've got the PSA vault, and then you've also got which actually I think the PSA got the eBay vault. I forget. There's been enough shifting around. And then you've got Fanatics Collect, formerly PWCC, so that's one. And again, COMC, to a certain degree, to a lesser degree, does have a lot of those same elements to it. So I think that's another piece of that puzzle that you got to think about a little bit. Now, the other side of it, for some people that are arguing against it, I already said, for most collectors, it doesn't make sense anyway. But other people are worried about, like, well, what if something happens to the vault? What if, the company goes out of business? PWCC obviously had its issue that resulted in it being bought by Fanatics in the first place. So stuff like that can happen. But I would counter to you, well, what if your bank gets robbed? What if somebody finds out you got valuable cards inside and break into your house and steal? Like, card shops are getting stuff stolen from them, Breaking into your house is not that much of a stretch. Again, it comes down to security, insurance, the things that you got, and the same kind of consideration. The what-if scenario can be played out anytime. And like I said at the very beginning, for most people, it's not going to be as big an issue. And if you don't have super valuable cards that you have to worry about most of the time, then it probably isn't a consideration that you even have. Your mileage may vary, to each their own. So I think that covers it. Thoughts on the vaults? Do you use one? I answered that. And then if not, which one you heard is best? I answered that as well. So that kind of covers that question. So again, if there are questions like that, that occasionally warrant maybe a video like this, I'm happy to do it. But it's just, let me know. You can always put it in the comments section. I do read the comments, and that's a good way of just letting me know if there's something that maybe you want me to touch on or give an opinion on. I certainly can. I don't know why you need it. Otherwise, you can just come on the Friday Live and just ask. That's usually the best way. And then you can get the sage wisdom of the Burrell. Or, you can have Eric try to answer a question. I'm not sure why you'd want that, but you could. Or you could read Hamlet to you. That could be exciting. A couple of quick things coming up on the channel. First one is that I'm on the wrestling channel that I've got. I actually received a piece of mail from Upper Deck. I actually got an Upper Deck redemption for the first time. So this is a new adventure. So here it is. I did receive it. It's a booklet. So it is for the wrestling. It's actually pretty neat. Not too bad, all things considered. So I'll give a little bit more of a description and run through that on the other channel. Link is in the description for that. Friday live stream will be happening as normal. I'm recording this on Thursday. This is going to go up here in a couple of minutes once I get this edited and uploaded. And then Friday live will be happening usual, longest running episodic, whatever it is, we don't know. And then I think the plan still is to do a watch along for the Super Bowl. Obviously, a lot of people don't care for this matchup, which is completely fine. I'm still going to watch it. But at the same time, I figure we'll watch it. We'll BS a little bit. So, even if you don't want to watch the Super Bowl, you can watch us watch the Super Bowl and BS and hang out in the chat. You're more than welcome to do that. I'll try to invite some people on so we can hang out and chat and talk about it. Bring snacks. Bring your beverage of choice. We'll basically just hang out. And if the game's boring, at least we can talk about some other stuff. Which is basically what we did the last couple of watch-alongs. So it was fun. It just gives us a little bit something to do. And I figured we'll do that. I enjoyed doing it the last couple of weeks leading up to the Super Bowl. So we'll do it one more time for the Super Bowl, and that'll be the end of it for another football year. So with that, I think I've covered everything I wanted to cover in this one. So for how rusty I am in doing one of these videos is not too bad. Obviously, the ballot is completely a different thing. That's not the same kind of video. I have a little bit of a different angle and a little bit of different fun on it. Also, thanks to everybody for their engagement on the most recent podcast episode. Very good comments. Nothing that specifically was a question, and those ones, I think I responded to everybody in the comment section. If I didn't, feel free to send a subsequent message on there. To the best of my ability, I think I answered or at least acknowledged all the comments, if nothing else. I'll at least give you a heart and a thumbs up or something just to acknowledge it if there's no response really warranted or required. Otherwise, I'll usually leave some kind of an answer or response if you've got any thoughts or anything or question. Otherwise, if you've got any questions or anything you'd like me to touch on in this format, I certainly can. You let me know, and then we'll go from there. So more videos coming up on the channel. Friday live stream, which I just talked about. And with that said, happy Thursday. Enjoy the last couple of days before we go to the weekend. So hopefully you enjoy your weekend as well. Like if you like the video, subscribe to the channel. Thanks very much, and we'll catch you in the next one.